Right, let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me, and if so, we will get started. So just give me a thumbs up in the chat if the audio is working, and we should be good to go. Okay, great. So it looks like the audio is working. It is a very windy night, and I did forget the microphone. I had a very busy day today, so unfortunately, there's probably going to be some wind noise in the chat. So just try to ignore that, and we'll try to do the best we can here. So good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Walks and Wall Street. Today is November 14th, 2023. And we are reporting live from East 23rd Street and Broadway. I'm quite literally sitting right outside of the Flatiron Building. Now, really quickly before we start, I just have to give some updates. So the Flatiron Building was sold at auction, and now they are going to be turning this building into luxury condominiums. Now, there's been a lot of backlash about this, and I think we're probably going to save that conversation for another day. But a lot of New Yorkers and even a lot of politicians are kind of upset, mainly because there'll be luxury condos, right? And the city is really trying to push affordable housing. Now, we're not going to talk about the logistics of that tonight because just quite frankly, there's some bigger breaking news, I should say bigger breaking economic data on the street, but we will talk about that. So just keep that in the back pocket as we move through the week. But the biggest piece of economic data that came out today, quite obviously, is inflation. All right, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have reported their CPI numbers for the previous month, which is October. So if we take a look all the way back and just do a quick review, which I think is appropriate, and if you want to follow along in the chat, just type !CPI in the chat. You know what? I might as well just drop the link since I'm at my computer. But I think this is important that we all follow along. So if you look at my highlighted name, Walks on Wall Street, it should be in yellow. Go ahead and click that link and we will follow along here. So inflation in the United States, or the CPI number, peaked or hit a top in June of 2022. That was the peak in inflation, coming in at 9.1%, so just under double-digit inflation in the United States. Now, once the Federal Reserve really started to take this seriously and understood that inflation is way out of control, they started to get very, very aggressive on their stance of monetary policy, right? So if we just review what the Federal Reserve's goal is, the Federal Reserve's goal is two things. Number one, price stability, and number two, full employment. Now, in June of 2022, price stability was totally off the mark with almost 10% inflation in the United States. So the Federal Reserve had to be very aggressive in changing monetary policy from quantitative easing and more accommodative policy to QT, or quantitative tightening, which includes two things. Number one, raising interest rates, the Fed funds rate, and number two, letting the balance sheet, or the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, shrink or decline. If you go to the St. Louis Fed's website, you can scroll down, I think about midway of the page, and look at the Federal Reserve's balance sheet in real time. Now, the Fed's balance sheet is made up of mainly two sections. Number one, mortgage-backed securities, and number two, U.S. Treasuries. And as the Federal Reserve buys bonds, it adds liquidity into the system, and it also suppresses interest rates. But the main thing that everybody focuses on is the Fed funds rate. So as the Federal Reserve started to raise interest rates, inflation in the United States started to contract, and in a pretty big way. So it's gone from all the way 9.1% to the reading today coming in at 3.2% year over year. Now, again, these are year over year price increases, right? So inflation is still increasing at about 3.2% year over year. And if we review the Fed's mandated target, that's 2%. It's 2% inflation. But at least it's going in the right direction. So this is some good news. Now, the economists that were surveyed by the market, it was unanimous that they were expecting about 3.3% inflation. So we actually came in a little bit below that. And if you remember correctly from the live streams previously, we've alluded to the fact that this may happen for a couple reasons. Number one, crude oil over the month of October has almost declined every single day. October 1st, 2023, crude oil was trading at roughly $90 a barrel. Starting November 1st, right about a month later, we saw prices significantly less by about $10. So energy prices came down quite a bit. But I think the one category, which you all know what I'm about to say, that sort of did the most damage in helping reduce inflation, or that headline number, was shelter costs. And we've sort of alluded to this multiple times. We've been saying that shelter costs are going to continue to decline in the United States, mainly because, well, I should say we're going to continue to see this unfolding after pretty much everything else has come back to reality, right? So we've seen medical care and commodities, apparel, energy, electricity already roll over, and shelter has been very, very pesky in being elevated, and that is because it is a less liquid asset class, and usually asset prices correct in order of liquidity. So shelter costs declined yet again on a year-over-year basis and on a month-over-month basis. So shelter came in at 6.7% for October, and if we go back to last month in September, shelter came in at 7.2%. This is the 7th consecutive month now that shelter costs continued to decline. And if you click the link in the chat, right, or if you type !CPI, it'll bring you to this very helpful infographic here that'll list every single subcategory of inflation. So you can check all items, right? If we uncheck shelter, this will show you the all items increase or decrease in inflation. Obviously, you can see here the October reading came in at 3.2%. But if you deselect that and just select shelter costs, actually, let's put all items and shelter costs on top of one another. You'll see that the headline number has collapsed, but shelter costs are significantly lagging, right? It's a lagging indicator, shelter, because real estate is an illiquid asset class, and it takes a little bit longer for the full effect of interest rates to impact prices of real estate. And we're just starting to see that come down now, which is very good news, okay? Regardless of what you see in the mainstream media or on the mainstream financial channels of people saying it's going to be another 2008 financial crisis housing crash and real estate's going to go to zero. No, that's not going to happen. But what will happen is rental prices will come down a little bit. Prices of single family homes will come down a little bit. And that is a good thing, okay? Because in my opinion, what is most important to build a healthy middle class, data shows, is through homeownership. And if we are shifting towards a nation of renters because nobody could afford a home, or even an investment property, that is not a good thing. If you look at the vast majority of first-generation millionaires in the United States, which means people that didn't inherit their money, they didn't get it from mommy or daddy, first-generation millionaires, the number, I would say the largest percentage of their net worth is made up in equity in their home, okay? Whether that be a single-family home or an investment property. So if we're turning towards a system in the United States where the vast majority of Gen Z and millennials are priced out of homeownership, well, what does that mean for those individuals trying to build wealth? It is a very bleak picture. So I think rental prices are going to continue to soften. I don't think there's going to be a crash, but you're going to see things come back down to reality to match the interest rate environment, and that is a good thing. So a lot of good news out of this inflation report, but it's not all rosy, because the Federal Reserve's mandated target is 2%, and we are not there yet. So I think there's still a little bit of a long ways to go. But with the good inflation report coming through, the market reacted in a big way. Talk about a rip-your-face-off rally in the stock market. The S&P 500 up 84 points on the day, almost 2%. If you look at small caps, ticker symbol IWM, which is the ticker symbol for the Russell 2000 ETF, totally scorched earth, rip your face off, blow the brains out of the back of your skull rally, up 6% on the day, and bond yields down across the entire yield curve. So we'll talk about that. Will this rally persist? Will the rally last? We'll talk about that tonight on Walks and Wall Street. So let me go ahead and close up the laptop here. I'll say hello to everybody in the chat, and we will get started. And apologies for being late. So, all right, let's kick this thing off. Just let me pack my bags up here, and we'll get going. Now, everybody, this is exactly what we were talking about the other day. You can't really see the Empire State Building anymore from Madison Square Park because there's this brand new development that is totally obstructing the view, which is kind of disappointing, honestly, even though the city does need a lot more inventory for housing. It literally blocks the best view, arguably, in the entire city. So, I don't know. I see Cody is in the chat, UnaJ23, Chuck Rumford, good to see you. Jimmy Vinny is here, DC322, Jonathan from Florida, good to see you. Our moderator Laytha is in the chat. 1W is here. Lori Crockett, Carl Roth, thank you for joining us. Colton Manning, Hawaii. Very nice meeting you in the city, by the way. Hopefully you enjoyed your stay here in the greatest city on earth, New York. I see Vincent is here. Says good evening, Tom, Steph, UF, Melee, Abdullah, John Casey, Andrew Lee, Troy Atman, and Gary Carpenter. It's been a busy day for me, but it's been a good day. We're getting deals done. Things are starting to close, and transaction volume is actually picking up. So today, I actually went under contract with a client for a parking space. Remember I was telling you guys I was selling those parking spaces on the Upper East Side of Manhattan? So we just, I put one under contract today for $140,000, which I think is a great deal. So very happy for them. Hopefully that'll close before the new year. And then I'm working on another deal where a client may buy 2 spaces, still negotiating the price. Then we just closed on 2 apartments in the Conover today. They've been in contract for over 30 days now. They closed today, so it's been busy. And tomorrow there's going to be a big event that we are throwing at Gramercy North. It's going to be like a big health and wellness event. There's going to be a lot of brokers there. There's going to be so many people there. So I was running around like crazy, you know, dealing with cleaners and dealing with designers today. So it's been nonstop. So apologize for being late, but it's inflation day, CPI day, which means we have to break down line item by line item all of the different categories of inflation. But the market seemed to have interpreted this inflation report very, very well, which is the good news. This is the Flatiron Building, everybody. We're going to be walking uptown today. Life, Liberty, and Guns is Tom. We paid $140,000 for our second home in 1982, 1,800 square feet. Isn't that kind of crazy, Life, Liberty, and Guns, to sort of make that comparison? And this is why I say that the Manhattan real estate market is unlike anything else in the world. It's a very different market because it's just so unique, and you're dealing with a completely different set of needs and wants, right? So many people who are watching the stream are like, wait, somebody bought a single parking space just to park their car for $140,000 when, you know, you could go to Middle America somewhere and buy a single family home for $140,000. Yeah, and you know, that parking space, you know, during the pandemic, that was listed for like $300,000. So prices have actually collapsed with that. So imagine the people that were paying $300,000 for a parking space. But yeah, it's some people really want the convenience, right? If you've ever parked your car in a major parking garage in the city, you know, you're dealing with car elevators, you're dealing with valet. People don't want their cars dinged and dented. and people just want to come and go as they please. So, you know, if you have the money and you want to buy convenience, you're essentially buying time. Some people want that. Some people need that. So it's just an interesting market for sure. Wow, Life, Liberty, and Guns says it was a Southern California home. That must be worth like 10x what it's worth now. In Southern California, great weather, beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's walk up Broadway here, guys. I see Sally's here. What's up, NBA Elias? It's good to see you. I'm interested to see your take on inflation today. Brian M says 100K is 180K is pocket change to some. Yeah, I mean, look, it's the way. I'll say one thing, which is actually something I've learned coming into the luxury real estate sales business. And this is, I had to learn this very quick. My brain works in a very, very different way. As you could tell, I'm very analytical and I'm very quantitative in my analysis of everything, right? It's all about the numbers. Does this work good as an investment and the like? Now, that's still very good to have if you're selling luxury real estate, but sometimes, right, for an example of, you know, somebody buying a parking space for $180,000, you know, if you factor in the carrying costs, your common charges, your taxes, is it, do the numbers work as an investment? Like, oh, am I going to make money off of this deal? Probably not, right? That's sort of how my brain works. But if you are in a different position in your life and you're already very independently wealthy, some people value time in a completely different way than maybe someone like me who's, you know, just at the beginning of their career building wealth, right? Relative to some people that have net worths of $200 million, right? So the 5 hours it takes for someone to get their car out of a garage that is a valet garage, you know, and have it handed to them, they would much rather say, you know what, I'll just stroke a check for 140 grand and I could pull into my private garage in Manhattan and I don't have to deal with people, I don't have to worry about interacting with anybody, and I know my car is going to be safe, right? Especially if these people are driving like Range Rovers and things like that. So the sale is very different, particularly as you get higher up in price point for apartments. Because again, traditionally, I think about the real estate transaction is, okay, is this property going to cash flow? And how can I rent it out, right? But again, that's coming from me when I bought my property. 2-family home, right? Technically 2-family home. Is the property going to cash flow and how much money is it going to produce over its life? Some people, right, clients that I deal with, they're not necessarily looking to, you know, have their moneymaker be this property that they're going to purchase. They've already have family businesses in oil and gas, in retailing, in the semiconductor business, and they've generated significant amounts of wealth over their life, and they're looking to buy a property that they love, that they can, you know, totally gut renovate it to how they like. So it's a different sale. It's more of an emotional want as opposed of a need or a cash flowing investment. So I think that's the biggest sort of takeaway so far. You know, if you're dealing with more of these nuanced transactions of buying a parking space in a, you know, full service garage or something like that, it's definitely a different perspective that I'm not used to thinking about so much. Anyway, this is where are we at now? 28th Street. This is the brand new Ritz-Carlton, everybody. Look at this. They just built this. So this is the brand new Ritz-Carlton Residences right on the corner of Broadway here. I haven't been in it, but this place is nice. I was looking at some of the photos on Streeties. Really, really nice. Hey, Joe C, what's up? This is Tom. What do you think about San Francisco cleaning up? Yeah, I think it's, obviously it's good, right? That's what we want. We want the city of San Francisco to be clean. But it was just a little bit dystopian listening to the governor of California sort of give his reasoning why. Essentially, he said the only reason why we cleaned up San Francisco is because, you know, leaders from communist China were coming to San Francisco. So we cleaned it up. But what about the, you know, hardworking, tax-paying American citizens that have to live in squalor every day in San Francisco? What about the poor, you know, homeless veterans that are on the streets of San Francisco living in quite literal squalor every day? Why don't you clean it up to service the people that voted for you, right? Isn't that what the politicians are supposed to do, is work for you, not work for, you know, the CCP? So in that aspect, it was really, really disturbing, actually, a little bit. At least that's how I interpreted it. But you know what? At least he was being honest, right? And somebody asked me this question the other night on the live stream, and I don't want to get too political tonight, but someone says, Tom, if it came down to Joe Biden or Gavin Newsom, who would you vote for? Obviously, I wouldn't vote for either of them, but if I had to, like if there was a gun to my head, 100,000% I would vote for Gavin Newsom in a millisecond. And I'll tell you why. Because at least he is at least he's honest about what he's doing. He's saying, yes, if you vote for me, I'm going to fleece you, I'm going to deceive you, I'm going to lie to you, I'm going to rip you off and steal all your money. And he's totally upfront about it. While Joe Biden he just lies about it and says, no, I work for the American people, I want to make life better, but he does underhanded deals and funnels our money to fight proxy wars all over the world. So at least I'll vote for somebody who's not going to gaslight me, but will still fleece me and steal all my money. But yeah, I mean, I was really taken back by that interview. Anyway, we'll move on from that. Let's talk about the bond market for a moment, because even though the inflation print was really the big headline of the day, in my view, I actually think that the action in the bond market should have been the number one largest thing that anybody was talking about today. So if you go to cnbc.com/bonds, once again, cnbc.com/bonds, or if you want to follow me on Twitter, @WalksWallStreet, I posted a few charts. And I put up a few charts specifically of the yield of the 10-year U.S. Treasury and the 30-year. Now, once that inflation report dropped before the bell, what did everybody notice? It was an unbelievable move in the debt market. There was massive amounts of buying in the debt market, and yields cratered across the curve, and you saw stocks take off like a bat out of you know where, and the market rallied throughout the entire day. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and particularly small cap stocks, right, rallied. And not necessarily due to the inflation report, but due to yields coming down quite drastically across the curve. And this is something we've talked about also. So if you read the newsletter that I sent out to everybody last Thursday, and if you go back into the archives, one of the things we've talked about specifically is why small caps have been getting crushed over the past few months. This is a great shot of the Empire State Building. And that's because small cap companies, they hold a lot of debt. And a large percentage of the debt that's held by small cap companies are floating rate. And once those rates come to renew, they're going to renew at much higher interest rates. And that means there's going to be a larger percentage of small cap companies' earnings going towards debt servicing, right? And these small cap companies aren't producing much earnings to begin with. So when you have rates coming down, that sort of sends the message to the market that, okay, inflation is coming down, it's on the right track, So maybe the Federal Reserve is done, right? Maybe there's going to be no more rate hikes, right? Shelter costs are coming down. Things in the inflation world don't seem as bad as they may seem. So it's very important to watch that action in the debt market, because as of right now, right, and one day doesn't make a market, but as of right now, the market, particularly the bond market, is essentially letting us know that the Fed may be done. I don't know, anybody have any comments on that? Any thoughts? What do you make of the move in the bond market and the reaction in equities today? Troy Atmans is the Russell 2000 crushed it today. Massive day for small caps. Yeah, I mean, I think at one point, and if you look at the ETF that tracks the Russell 2000, it's the BlackRock iShares IWM ETF. So if you just go to like TradingView or your Bloomberg terminal or MarketSmith and type in IWM, you could see a visual of the price action today. And I think intraday it was almost up 6% on the day. It's come back a little bit, but I think we closed up like what, 5.25? I mean, it was a really massive move. It was a really, really big move. Hey, Robert's here. What's up? I think we saw these people playing ping pong yesterday too. Hey, NBA Elias, is Tom. I think the CPI numbers today diminishes the probability the Fed hikes in December. It makes it difficult for them to tighten again. Also have to keep an eye on the potential for deflation, but not an issue now. I think you're pretty much 100% spot on. To NBA Elias's point, on our Sunday night live stream, we sort of went over the forecasts, right? Or I would say the consensus that economists were estimating for the inflation report. And the vast majority of economists that were polled were expecting CPI to come in at 3.3%. We came in at 3.2. So better than expected, right? And to NBA Elias's point, coming in better than expected sort of tells the market that the Fed may be, done. Because the Federal Reserve looks at all of these different economic indicators, and that's why we cover them almost every day on the live stream. We cover the Institute for Supply Management PMI number, right? That covers the manufacturing and the service sector in the economy. We cover the CPI report, which came out today. We covered the National Association of Realtors and their existing home sales, right? These are all of the different leading, coincident, and lagging economic indicators we look at, mainly because the Federal Reserve looks at the same indicators as they go out to set monetary policy. So I think I agree. Dan says, I think we can safely say that being in the market beats timing the market. Yeah, generally, for sure. Well, look at this. This is like, I've been seeing a lot more of these going up recently, guys. These bank cafes. So this is a Capital One cafe. Have you guys been seeing a lot of this in your neck of the woods? Because here in Manhattan, what they're trying to do is they're trying to morph banking institutions with coffee shops. And I think this is like an amazing idea. I think this is probably one of the best ideas I've ever seen. There's one on Park Avenue. No, there's one on Madison Avenue by Bloomberg. I think this is such an amazing idea because banks know that, nobody really comes into a traditional bank anymore, right? We've been talking about how online banking is taking over. So if you want to drive customer traffic into a banking branch, you need to create a space where they can come, sort of like a co-working space, to drive traffic. I think that's an ingenious idea, whoever came up with that. Because think about all of the bankers, right? The retail bankers that are trying to open business accounts, like small business accounts. If they see somebody, working at the coffee shop inside the bank, maybe that's a CEO of a startup, right? Maybe that's a small business owner. That's a great way to network and grow accounts. I think that's a fantastic idea. Anna says, I like the idea. I wonder how the coffee is. It was all right. When I went to the one on the Upper East Side, Meld says, is it because nobody goes into banks anymore? Probably. Most probably. Alan S is here. Alan says, I haven't really seen any in California.
Yeah, fuck you.
You have some derelicts. Hey, it's Tiff. What's up? Says, hey Tom, is it fair to say you go to Red Hook every Sunday? It is fair to say, and I was there today. I was in Red Hook today. I had a really good showing there, and I may be there on Friday. Yeah, so at Tiff, today we closed on 2 units. If you're ever in the neighborhood, let me know. Let me know. But if you guys sort of want a written, in-depth sort of review on this inflation report, I'm going to include it in next week's newsletter, the Behind the Street newsletter. So if you type !news, NEWS in the chat, once again, !news, NEWS in the chat, it'll drop the link to our Substack, and you can punch in your email and sign up. Next Thursday, we're going to be sending out our next edition, and it's going to be packed with inflation analysis, as well as a little bit of a case study on home builders, particularly the Pulte Group, Toll Brothers, D.R. Horton, and the like. Hey, Jeremy777, what's up? Thank you so much for your very kind $5 donation. It says, hey Tom, by any chance, do you happen to know if there is a parade coming up in New York City? Yes. So the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade will be coming up on Thanksgiving Day. So in a week? Whoa, that's scary. That's crazy. Is that true, guys? Thanksgiving is next week. I remember walking around doing these live streams in 80-degree weather in August, and now we're already talking about Thanksgiving, which is crazy, right? Anyway, but yeah, Jeremy, thank you so much for supporting, and we hope to see you at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade here in a week. NBA Elias is next Thursday, Thanksgiving. Robert says, came quickly this year. Definitely did. Travel Nisa says, yes, it is in Black Friday. Looking to see how retail sales are. Well, I think we're getting retail sales data a little bit later in the week. But speaking of Black Friday, did you guys hear that Target is not going to be open on Thanksgiving anymore? Because they've gotten severe feedback from their employees saying that they'd much rather be with their families. And I think that's a good move. I actually commend and give a big thumbs up to management over there at Target. I think people can chill out for one day. You don't have to go to the stores and go crazy and trample each other, right? I think, one day where the employees can, spend Thanksgiving with their families normally, I think that's good for society, actually, particularly in the climate that we're in right now. I don't know, anybody else agree with that, disagree with that? Kim Brockton says he used to make news when Target was open on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah, I mean, with Black Friday and everybody trampling each other and doing all the craziness, I think retailers really need to kind of walk that back and rethink that strategy. So who knows, maybe Cyber Monday type sales will take over the Black Friday craziness when people, stampede each other in the stores. Who knows? Hey, Carol Brown, good to see you. Says yes, they should be able to celebrate too. Brian M says, I don't think I've ever shopped on a Black Friday. Jeremy777, thank you so much for your very kind $5 donation. Says, hey Tom, I can't make it out to New York City, but I will DVR the parade. I need a lot of money to come out to New York City. Yeah, no problem. You know, and a lot of live streamers cover the parade. I think Safat of the New York City Walking Show, he usually covers that every year. That's how I watch it, honestly. I don't watch the TV. I watch him and Action Kid if he covers it. I think they, not to, you know, throw shade on the mainstream news, I think they cover it better. I don't want to watch a commercial every 2 seconds, you know. Not a knock to NBC or anything, but all right, so we're walking northbound on 5th Avenue, and I think we may just have enough time to take a little bit of a stroll around Bryant Park by the Steven Schwartzman building, so we'll see. Hey, Maroof says, hey, walks in Wall Street and chat. Happy Tuesday from a very cold night in Toronto. Hey, good to see you, and welcome to all of our Canadian viewers. It's not too cold here in New York. It's actually going to warm up. Thursday is going to be about 65 degrees, which is going to feel amazing. I may break out my swimsuit. You never know. Anonymous says, I'm from Texas. Fantastic. Lance says, what are your plans? I don't know. I may fly back to Miami. I'm not too sure. I may spend like 2 or 3 days in South Florida. It really just depends on how business is. And for whatever reason, I've seen a huge surge in business activity just over the last 2 weeks here in the New York City real estate market. I mean, people that have gone dark on me over the last 3-4 months are now calling me back, wanting to see properties, wanting to revisit deals. So, you know, they usually say there's a little bit of a push going into the end of the year. So maybe I'll need to be here. Just really depends. I don't know. I believe we made this point before, but one thing I want to draw attention to, right, as sort of well, usually the way it works is as the market comes out of correction territory, the stocks and the sectors that went down the least, or as I like to call it, bucking the trend during the correction, are usually the sectors that lead during the new bull cycle. So we've talked about cybersecurity companies. Cybersecurity has really been leading here, right? Not only the particular cybersecurity ETFs, but individual stocks as well. Palo Alto Networks, CrowdStrike, Zscaler, to name a few. But look at the semiconductor index, ticker symbol SOXX. That has really been rallying here into NVIDIA's earnings report, which I think is going to be next week. So that is the last big, massive, what you call it, Magnificent Seven, right? Stock company that's going to be reporting. It's NVIDIA. So the market's rallying into that. But another sector that's been outperforming and doing really, really good, that is essentially breaking every narrative, is home builders, right? Builders of single family and multifamily homes are doing really, really well. We'll talk about a couple reasons why, but first let's take a look at the brand new New York Public Library. You know, there's actually a really nice rooftop here, but on the 5th floor, I'll give everybody a little bit of a tip. On the 5th floor of the New York Public Library here, it's the International Business Center, and they have Bloomberg terminals that you could use for free. That's now $2,900 piece of software a month that you could use for free right there at the New York Public Library. But anyway, you know, home builders have been doing really well, and we haven't really done a deep dive into the earnings reports of those particular companies, but earnings were really good. And margins, or gross margins, were also very good, which you really wouldn't think in a high interest rate environment. But you kind of have to think about the dichotomy of the real estate market as it stands today. Yes, it is true that the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage is right around 7.5%. Now that's down from 8%, but it's still much higher than it was in 2021. But the vast majority of homeowners in the United States today that has a mortgage on their property, their interest rate is 4% and below. So there's not a lot of motivation to sell. And even if those people do list their homes for sale, they're less likely to negotiate on price because they have to go right back out into the marketplace with higher rates to compete with everybody else. So if you think about the reason why home builders are doing so well, it's because when you're buying from a big developer, right, with a big balance sheet and a lot of inventory, they're motivated to move the inventory, right? They don't build the homes just to sit on them and look at them, right? They build the homes to sell them. So if you're a customer, a client, and you want to buy a new development or a new single family home, but interest rates are 7.5%, you can work with the company. You could work with Toll Brothers. You could work with D.R. Horton. You know, you could work with Pulte Home and KB Home and the like to do some concessions. Maybe rate buy downs, right? Maybe they buy down your rate. Maybe they, will structure a deal where they, write you a check for, taxes or something. There's so much stuff that they can do. They can negotiate with discounting the price of the home. And since they have so much cash on the balance sheet, and since they're an actual company, they're able to do those things. Not so much if you're working with a seller, right? If I'm selling my home, I'm not going to work with the buyer and buy down his rate, right? I'm going to say, look, you're going to pay the list price or maybe a little bit below, or, I don't have a reason to sell. So if you look at the last 2 months of data in the new home sales market, new home sales have actually ticked up quite a bit. And you're seeing the majority of sales transactions, or I would say a big uptick in sales transactions, happen specifically in new dev or new home sales. Next week, I'll be writing about this. Hold on, let me get away from this guy. Next week on Thursday, I'll be writing about this because I think this is an important trend to watch. Because if you look at some of the ticker symbols of these single-family home builder stocks, they're outperforming and they're breaking a very, very big narrative here. So if you type !news, N-E-W-S in the chat, once again, !news, N-E-W-S in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link to our Substack. So every other Thursday, I write a free financial newsletter for the chat, just in case you missed a stream, where you could either read it or there's an audio version. And one of the main parts in next week's newsletter is going to be a section about the housing market. Why are we seeing this transition to higher increased sales of new development? And I think it's going to tie in very nicely with the potential changes in monetary policy we have coming down the pike, particularly after this good inflation report. Oh, you know what? We're going the wrong way. I totally forgot. I wanted to take you guys to Bryant Park. If it's still open, might as well give it a try. So we'll head towards the Winter Village at Bryant Park. Life, Liberty, and Guns says, I think it closes at 10. I think you're right. What time is it now? It must be past 10 already, so we started late. Let's do a quick time check in the chat. Maybe it's like 10:30 already. Now, do you guys want to know the depressing part? The depressing part was, I walked outside at 5 o'clock to let in one of the cleaners that was going to clean the apartment for the event we're having, and it was already pitch black, and it felt like 10 o'clock at night at 5 o'clock at night. So it's that time of year again where we're going to essentially be living in utter darkness for the vast majority of our lives. It's 10:07. So maybe we'll have a couple minutes to be able to walk around in there. Let's check it out. Actually, never mind. It looks like it is closed. But here it is, Winter Village at Bryant Park, sponsored by Bank of America. Eat, shop, skate, and smile. Hey, Joe, Kansas. This is Tom. Will New York ever do what San Francisco did and do a quick cleanup, even if it will revert back soon? Well, I don't really, I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit biased, but New York, you can't compare the situation that's going on in San Francisco to New York. It is definitely not as, I mean, New York City is dirty, right? And I complain about it being dirty, but it is definitely not like San Francisco. I mean, in San Francisco, you walk down the street and there's quite literally tents. Well, I mean, allegedly, I've never been, but some of our viewers from San Francisco send me photos and there's tents in the street or on the sidewalk, like people living in like camping tents. There's none of that in New York City. So now here's some scary news, right? That may be a very, very harsh reality. And I actually feel really bad about this. And that's the migrant situation we have going on in New York. And I knew it would get like this. And I think many New Yorkers, I would say everybody but the politicians knew it would get like this. And the fact of the matter is, you know, the city is proposing to take large swaths of land in New York City that are not being utilized, like parks, things like that, and essentially making tent encampments for the migrants, right? That's one of their proposed solutions. And in the news right now, there's actually some migrants that are saying, hey, this is a ridiculous situation. I'm going back to where I came from. You know, that's a reality too. Let's just cross the street here before I get roadkill. All right, so some of the migrants are actually saying, hey, listen, I'm going back to where I came from because this is ridiculous. I can't sleep on the street here. And the reason why I feel bad is the following, is because, and we really need to change that landscape in the hierarchy here in the United States, because politicians will just say anything to get elected, right? They'll say anything warm and fuzzy to get elected. So in New York and in some of these more, democratic states, they'll say, we welcome everybody with open arms. Everybody should come here, and please, we welcome you with open arms, and we have a spot for you. Right? That sounds all warm and fuzzy, and that sounds great. And if that was a real thing, I would feel that way too. And I'm sure every single American in the United States feels that way, right? If you are facing political persecution, and if your country is dangerous, if you're living in extreme poverty, we want you to come to the United States, right? We want you to be here and prosper. But you also need to be a realist that you can't have 100,000 migrants bust to New York City and expect that we could have a place for them. Now, the politicians knew this, right? But they just wanted to get reelected. So I think I feel really bad for the migrants because we've essentially created this migrant crisis. The United States of America has created this migrant crisis because we've lied to people, right? Just to get reelected. We've told these migrants, okay, come here. If you come here, you will get free housing, you will get free food, and your kids will get free education. We've literally told them that. So put yourself in their shoes, right? If I was a migrant and I was in a country where I'm starving and I see US politicians coming on the media saying, hey, come to New York City, we're gonna give you free housing, we're gonna educate your kids for free, and we're gonna give you a free place to stay, and we're gonna give you a job, I'd be like, dude, let's walk 3,000 miles to New York City. This is fantastic. We're gonna get all this free stuff and we're gonna get free housing. But that's like la la fairyland. So we've essentially lied to all of these people. Now they're here and they're freezing on the street. And it's only November. Guys, I mean, dude, a lot of these migrants are coming from South America, very moderate, beautiful climates. And our solution is to give them a tent and say, here's your tent, go sleep outside. Are you crazy? That is so like dystopian and so ridiculous. But that's essentially what we've done. So you're starting to see migrants go back now. And it's just, this was a big waste of money. It was a big money pit. It was disorganized. And it was because our politicians just want to say warm and fuzzy things to get reelected. I'm actually almost embarrassed, honestly. It's kind of embarrassing, you know, because you're toying with people's lives, essentially. You're having these people come 3,000, 4,000 miles, promising them the world. And guess what? When they get here, they're sleeping on the street. It's ridiculous, man. Anyway. And now that's putting huge stress on the budget in New York City. Huge pressure on our budget. All right, everybody, we are now headed uptown on 6th Avenue. Now, technically this is called Little Brazil, but I never really view it like that. I've never even seen a Brazilian restaurant here. I heard that Kimberly says they are being given plane tickets. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that the city is doing, because essentially, you know, we don't have enough space to put them in these hotels, so we're giving them 30 days. We're saying, look, you could stay here for 30 days, then you got to figure out what you're going to do. Obviously, they can't figure out anything because they can't work here, right? They don't have the necessary papers. So they say, look, you could either reapply to the system, which is going to take forever, which essentially means they'll just be thrown into homelessness, or they could take a plane ticket back home, which we're paying for. So the whole thing is just, I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's just unacceptable. And I know I never, ever talk about politics on the stream, but it's kind of gotten to the point where, look, if you own property or if you're a taxpayer in New York City, I mean, they are literally just tossing our money down the drain and creating a crisis, an emergency. And most importantly, right, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, and then we'll move on. But most importantly, the city of New York is putting migrant lives at risk. The reason why they're walking 3,000 miles, right, being sold into sex slavery, you know, you see these heartbreaking videos of women with their children on their back, they're swimming through the Rio Grande River. It's because our politicians are telling them to come here because they're promising them all of this free stuff when they know they can't give it to them when they get here. That is so crazy to do that to somebody. I mean, I think Pix 11 News was interviewing some of the migrants here. And they're like, dude, everything that we were promised, we've gotten none of it. And you know, this poor lady, I think she was from Venezuela, she's sleeping on the sidewalk in a tent with her kid. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's just so ridiculous. But so it's not all to blame of the migrants, right? The media sometimes like to say, oh, it's, you know, it's the migrants' fault. It's not. When you actually think about it, it's the politicians that only care about getting reelected. It's their fault, because if you go on TV and you say things warm and fuzzy and you overpromise, you'll get elected, but that creates a massive crisis. And when people are in despair, right, if you're coming here from Venezuela and you're like, you know what, I want to bring my family to New York City because my kid can be educated, go to college, get a great job, you know, for a better life. But when you get here, it's like, wait, nothing, you know, these politicians said were true. It was all lies. That's the crazy thing that is so bad that needs to stop. And you're starting to see it. I mean, these migrants are going back home because it's so crazy. Anyway. Two hurt Jays is what are the barricades for? I think they're already starting to set up and prepare for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's only in a week. It's next Thursday, which I'm excited for. If I'm in New York City for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I may go. Yeah, MB says qualify your statements when referring to the... Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make, though, and we won't, you know, have a full-on political discussion, but the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, if you were in their situation and you see all of these US politicians on the TV, you know, you watch YouTube videos, you have access to the internet, and they say, hey, we're a sanctuary city, all migrants are welcome here. They say all migrants are welcome. We'll give you free housing, we'll write you a check, and we'll make sure you have working papers to work. If I was in Venezuela, I would be like, dude, let's go to America and let's go to New York City. We're gonna get free housing. And the mayor and the governor, Kathy Hochul, says everybody is welcome here and we will welcome them with open arms. If you were, you know, in their situation, you would go too. I mean, any normal, rational person would go. Or rational person would go. The point I'm trying to make is that the reason why the crisis is so bad, you have to go to the root cause. You have to cut the head off of the snake. And the snake is the politicians lying on national TV to score brownie points, right? All migrants are welcome. We welcome you with open arms, and we will house you. But after 100,000 migrants come to New York City, well, that statement turns into a big lie. You lied. We don't have 100,000 apartments to house migrants. We have New Yorkers that can't even, you know, rent hotels or even rent apartments. That's sort of the point I'm trying to make. I get all the other stuff about, you know, who's illegal or not. We could have that debate for days. But the sheer point I'm trying to say is, if you tell the world that we're going to have money for you, we're going to have free places to stay for you, and you're welcome here with open arms, no matter what, people are going to come, right? I mean, if I throw a party in Central Park Tower and say, hey, everybody is welcome, there's going to be free food, there's going to be free booze, I'm going to have like 200,000 people coming to Central Park Tower in the triplex, right? It's obvious. So I think we need to figure out a way to fix that hierarchy, because politicians will just keep lying to get elected and create more and more crises for Americans and for people across the world. Yeah, Travis says, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. That's true, but sometimes when people are in such a dire situation, you're willing to do anything, particularly for your kids. And that's something I've learned when I was young. If you are in a very dire situation and you have kids, you're willing to do anything for your kids. So if you're a mom in Venezuela and you see all this stuff on the news about free housing, better life in New York City, in America, you're gonna go. So anyway, guys, this is the beautiful Radio City Music Hall Christmas tree here. But we're gonna head all the way up to Central Park South tonight. This is 30 Rockefeller Center. I feel as if they had more holiday Christmas stuff here. I think they had the candy canes here. I don't know if they're gonna put that up or not, but this is a really good Greek restaurant. Look at that. And the place is packed. Talk about retail and consumer spending data that we're going to get out later this month. Restaurants in New York City seem to be booming. And this is a 2-story restaurant. Very cool. All right, let's continue up. You have the Brooks Brothers across the street. Now, Brooks Brothers filed for bankruptcy during the pandemic, I believe. Thankfully, they're still open. I like Brooks Brothers stuff. Particularly their fall and their winter clothes. I like a lot. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We usually do these live streams usually every day starting at 8:30. TK Porsche's winter coat, not yet. Not yet. I've been crazy busy today, and tomorrow's gonna be an even busier day, so I don't know, hopefully Thursday is gonna be kind of like a relaxed day. We'll see. The good news is that it's gonna be 65 degrees towards the end of the week. But that is on the to-do list to get a winter jacket. This is the Nürburger Berman. It's right across the street from the UBS. This is one of my favorite office buildings in New York City. Obviously, you all know that the Seagram building is my personal favorite. And this is a cool view too. Radio City Music Hall, and then all the way down in Lower Manhattan, you see the beautiful World Trade Center. Yeah, Jonathan, like they have classic clothing, and I like that. It's almost like kind of boring classic clothing, which I like. I very seldom do I wear anything that's not neutral colors. I think boring. That's kind of the style that I wear, I guess. Oh, that's right. Hawaii says, I love being able to wear winter coats and boots in the city. Hawaii, that was good times. Now, my only regret is that I wish I had like one day off where we could have, maybe went to, got coffee or something, but I appreciate your gifts. The team has been eating all those Hawaiian fruit cookies, which are good. Those are amazing. I don't remember the brand name. I would recommend it on the stream, but I forget the brand name. But those Hawaiian fruit cookies are amazing. I've probably already had like 6 or 7. Hey, James, California, what's up? Thank you so much for your very kind $5 donation. Thank you for supporting the live stream. Appreciate it. How was Las Vegas, by the way? Usually Vegas is a pretty fun town, particularly this time of year, right? Because it's not super hot. But James, thank you so much for your donation. Hey, John Kelly, says Tom, 2 weeks from tomorrow, you'll get to see the Rockefeller Center tree lighting. That's probably going to be so crowded. Maybe I should attend it. Maybe I should go. I don't know. I just don't really like large crowds. We'll see. I think they're making a new bike lane. Hey, Eddie H. says, good evening, Tom. This weekend in Vegas will be the controversial F1 race on the Strip. Wow. Now, wasn't the Formula One event in Miami just a few months ago, or at least it felt like a few months ago? Some of my friends sent me the prices of like the food and drinks at the Formula One event. Let's try to get away from the noise. And they were charging like $45 for like 6 bottles of water for your table, which is wild. $45 for water. Crazy. You know what I think about all the time? Those construction workers that are operating those machines, it's so loud even over here. Imagine the poor guy doing the work right next to him. I mean, they must be wearing some powerful earplugs, or they could get some severe damage because those things are crazy loud, whatever that is. Oh, no way. Sharon says, my oldest sister went to the F1 Austin a few weeks ago. She saw Elon Musk. Whoa. Crazy. That's awesome. What did she say? Oh, did she meet Elon Musk or just saw him from afar? That's awesome. Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much for your very kind and generous $20 donation. Says, Tom, my mother loves to watch you and wanted to give you this donation from her. Oh, thank you so much. Ruby Barber. She's a big fan of yours. Well, we are a big fan of hers too. So thank you so much for watching. We're happy to have you here. And happy early Thanksgiving. So thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it very, very much. Who knows, maybe I'll be back down in South Florida for Thanksgiving. I don't know. But the plan right now, I think I'm gonna spend the entire month of November in New York, and then maybe the first week and the second week of December I'll be in South Florida, and then back in New York for the holidays, because I do like spending the holidays in the city. I don't know, it just doesn't really feel the same, you know, spending Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's in South Florida. Mainly because none of my family is there, but also just because of the climate. I feel like I want to be in a colder climate for the holidays, but then after the holidays, I mean, give me South Florida all day, every day. Now, Jonathan, speaking of South Florida, did anybody see the interview with Ken Griffin from Citadel Securities on Bloomberg. Now, I actually didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but one of our viewers here, I believe the Pond viewer, who's actually a stockbroker in the UK, sent me a little clip on Twitter. And Ken Griffin is predicting that South Florida, particularly Miami, could potentially be, in 10 years' time, the new financial capital of the world, mainly because it's going to act as a gateway to financial services in Latin America. Now, as we know, Ken Griffin is the founder and CEO of one of the most successful hedge funds in the world, and they just overtook Bridgewater. Let's actually go into the underworld. I'm feeling a little bit I'm feeling risky tonight, guys. Let's go into the underworld. Let's see if we find any rats. Looks really nice. Looks clean, looks good. But Citadel just recently surpassed Bridgewater Associates, which was founded by the great Ray Dalio, which has a really good book out. I think everybody should read Principles by Ray Dalio. Looks like all the trains are down here. But so for everybody in the chat, do you think that's a little bit overblown? Do you think that South Florida, particularly Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale area, and Miami, oh, look at those rats. You guys see them? Right here. Do you think that it will overtake New York City as the financial capital of the world? Yes, no? I'll give you my take, and I'll reference an interview with Jamie Dimon. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jamie Dimon is the CEO and founder. Oh my God, CEO and founder. He's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. Yeah, he's the founder of JP Morgan Chase. Hilarious. Let me go ahead and plug my phone in. Phone's gonna die, so hold that thought. I have to put you guys on the rat camera. So head on a swivel. Oops. How'd you guys make out? Good? Oof. TK Porsche is noted Miami, by the way. London and Singapore are major rivals to New York City as the world's financial centers. I think Singapore will probably lead the world. I'm very bullish on Singapore. Well, but I do have some thoughts. Now, you know what's crazy? And I actually didn't know this. So there was an interview that Jamie Dimon did. And I'm gonna include this link tomorrow. So remind me, I'll program it into the Nightbot. Jamie Dimon did this interview and he said, you know, it's sad with the political environment because JP Morgan Chase now has more. I don't really want to jump over this. We'll go back to the other side. I just don't feel like jumping over it right now. He said we now have more bank employees in the state of Texas than we do in New York City. Isn't that crazy? I would have never thought that in a million years, that a major financial institution like JP Morgan Chase now employs more people in the state of Texas than they do in the state of New York, which is crazy. So I would say this, never say never. I think Miami is very, very hyped up right now, but I do think that South Florida in general, that includes Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami, I think is going to continue to eat away at a lot of the financial talent. So if you haven't watched it, and I haven't watched it yet either, I think it just dropped today. It was the interview with CEO of Citadel, Ken Griffin, and his prediction is that in 10 years, South Florida, particularly in Brickell, where he's building his mega tall tower, could overtake some major cities like New York. We'll wait. I don't want to cross too many crazies out tonight. Well, anyway, could overtake some of the biggest and iconic financial cities for banking, hedge funding, things like that. I think it's possible. And the way that's going to happen is if you're going to have competitive salaries to a city like New York. So a first-year investment banking analyst is going to make a lot more working in New York City than they will working in South Florida. But what we're starting to see are those salaries are starting to become on par, right? And they're starting to hit parity with each other. I think the moment that happens, where if you could be a first-year investment banking analyst, all in, you're making $120,000 a year right out of college, and if you had the choice to work in the Miami office or the New York City office, I think you're probably going to have a lot more people choosing the Miami office. Better lifestyle, better quality of life, and guess what? No state income taxes on 120 G's. Think about how much of a difference that makes if you're a managing director or you're a partner and you're making, north of $1 million, $5-10 million a year. That's significant. So that is I would say that's going to be the decision maker, is if salaries and wages start to match New York City. If that happens, that's competition. I wouldn't say that I'm super, super old, but I'm getting up there. And the conversations that I have between my friends group, right, when we were just graduating college and deciding a place to work, it was always who's going to pay us the most money. And, yikes. And historically, right, and I think we could all agree with this, New York City pays by far the most, right? It's not even a comparison. If you're going to have a job really in any industry in either New York City compared to Miami or Austin, Texas, or even LA, New York City is going to win 10 times out of 10. So with very wealthy individuals that run extremely successful businesses like Citadel, right? The quantitative traders there, the computer science sort of majors that get kind of those jobs. If you get a job at Citadel, that is a very, very lucrative career opportunity. And with Ken Griffin building that billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar office in Brickell, that's going to attract talent. That's going to compound on each other. So that could mean trouble or competition for some of these other big cities. Who knows? Hey, Natalie says, hey, Tom and everybody, good to see you. Austin City Limits, what's up? Jonathan says, I agree with you. South Florida has a lot of good going on. I got a huge market share job increase a couple years ago because of the growth down here. Wow. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Slow and steady. But once wages start to compete with New York City, I think that's going to be the decision maker, not to sound like a broken record. And I think it will get there, and I'll tell you why it's going to get there. Because right now, Miami is almost as expensive, if not more expensive, than living in New York City, which means employers are going to have to pay more, right? Cost of living adjustment. So who knows? I think there's going to be some pretty interesting changes, a lot of big changes, which is exciting. Hey, Felix. Hey, Tom. JP Morgan Chase. Tallest tower in Houston downtown. Zero state income taxes, cheaper cost of living, more take-home pay as well. NBA Elias is how long before Miami begins to have New York City problems? Crime, expensive housing, overcrowding, bound to happen at some point. I think you could probably argue it's already there. I mean, not to the extent. I mean, I feel safe in New York City too, but I feel much better when I'm in Miami. Overcrowding, Miami is very crowded, extremely crowded. Little road rage. Oh, a lot of road rage. I don't get that, guys. So road rage and then boom, right up to the red light where everybody stops. I never understood that. It's like everybody gets all pissed off, swerving in and out, and then everybody's at the same red light. Like, it's like, chill out, dude. You're gonna kill someone. So, anyway. Okay, we're about to pass the JW Marriott Essex House. Hey, Dan Sanks. Tom, I just picked up my mom from JFK Airport after her 3-week vacation in China. Boy, the traffic there is a nightmare. Really? You know, I always just take the air train. Very, very rare do I take an Uber to the airport, but I could imagine on a day like today, rush hour airport. But if you're all enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these streams every single day starting at 8:30, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. James says, I do not like South Florida, humid, hot, and a hurricane. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not for everybody, right? Now, the reason why I love South Florida is because it's humid, hot. Maybe not the hurricane part, but it's humid and hot. Now, knock on wood, really a lot of the hurricanes have been happening on the West Coast, not really on the East Coast, which is strange, right? It usually Miami gets hammered by the hurricanes, but over the past couple years, it's really been hitting the West Coast, like Tampa, Florida, Fort Myers, Sarasota area. Miami's kind of been spared, ironically. It's been weird. But, to NBA Elias's point, right? Was talking about it's only a matter of time before, a lot of these cities that are experiencing huge growth start to adopt some of the same problems as the more mature cities, particularly with cost of living. Now, cost of living, particularly down there, Obviously, yes, the rent is going through the roof, but I think that's going to cool in a significant way. But it's really about the insurance costs, right? Is a major, major problem. But if I had to make a prediction, I think a lot of these luxury rentals in South Florida, specifically Miami, they're going to soften in price. And, well, the data is already supporting our supposition, right? So today was inflation day. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported their CPI report. I'll just show you guys a quick view of the awning here at 220 Central Park South. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported the CPI report, and CPI came in better than expected. Economists were expecting 3.3%. We came in at 3.2%. But the one thing that we all care about is shelter costs, right? Because that is the big laggard. And we are now 7 consecutive months where shelter has declined. I think it came in at 6.7%. My thought, or my view, is that it's going to continue to come down, right? Which is a good thing. So if you look back in previous market cycles and you want to look for some similarities, what usually happens is the markets that become the most turbocharged, they tend to correct the most, right? So what goes up must come down, right? Now, I don't think it's going to be a crash, but you're already starting to see rents come down. Like if you go on Zillow or StreetEasy, you know, studio apartments that used to go for $3,500 during the pandemic, you know, are either sitting on the market or they're renting now for like $2,600. Then they're probably going to go to $2,000, and then they'll probably, you know, a little bit later, you know, sort of average out around that $2,000 to $2,200 level. They're not going to go for the $3,500 anymore. And you're starting to see that all around downtown Miami and Brickell. You're going to see the same thing, maybe not so much in single family, because I actually am betting, right, if I had to make one bet on the real estate market in South Florida, is that single family homes will outperform these luxury condos, because developers are going gangbusters building luxury condo after luxury condo after luxury condo. I think they're overbuilding. I think a lot of that supply is going to hit the market, and you're going to have your overhead go up every year. It's almost guaranteed. The insurance cost to insure those huge buildings is going to go up every year, and that's going to hit people really hard. And I think that's actually going to deter people from buying in some of those condos. But single family homes in Miami-Dade County are very, very hard to come by, and there's almost zero development of single family homes in Miami-Dade County, specifically in a no flood zone, right? In flood zone X. So the property that I've been buying has been single family, duplex or triplex, in flood zone X in Miami-Dade County. I think if you, well, I can't tell anybody what to do, but that is how I am expressing my bull thesis on South Florida. This guy's riding the wrong way in the bike lane, and he has no lights on. It's dangerous because these people come whipping around the corner. These bikers are like 1,000,000 miles an hour. Anyway, yeah, you know, it's all about supply and demand, and I think people are increasingly going to want their own place. They're going to want to have a little bit of land. They're going to want to sort of be away from everybody, a little bit more secluded, and that's why you're starting to see the trade prices of single family in non-flood zones in Miami-Dade still stay elevated, pretty much where they were during the pandemic. Where you're seeing the softening is in a lot of these condominiums, and I think they're actually overbuilding. But that happens in every cycle. So, I don't know, any thoughts there? Agreements, disagreements? What are you guys seeing in your neck of the woods? This is 1 Central Park West. This is the Trump International Hotel and Tower. DC 322. Since I had to be extra careful with these bikes crossing the street. Yeah, I've seen some wild, unfortunate accidents here. I know, Steven says once you're in heaven, you won't come back. It's true. Hey, Stell, what's up? John's is cash only, somehow, for these luxury homes. Yeah, well, I mean, the upper class of Americans, right? Think the top 10% of Americans. They're, honestly, they've been relatively unaffected by rising rates. If anything, they've been benefiting from rising interest rates, right? Because wealthy individuals, particularly after this massive, I would say, generational bull run that we've had in equities, a lot of people are sitting on a lot of cash right now, and they're very, very liquid. So what does that mean? Well, think about money market accounts as we're overlooking Billionaires Row. I think this is very, very fitting to sort of talk about. Think about it like this. Well, let me unplug my phone. Sorry. Think about it like this. If you're liquid, 20, 30, 40 million bucks, you've made all this money in the run-up in the stock market, and now interest rates at a risk-free rate is 5.5%, and you've been in T-bills and you've been rolling. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix my computer. I gotta put you guys down for 2 seconds. Please stand by, hold that thought. Play some elevator music. Okay, sorry about that. So if you want to be a little bit risk averse, right? And you're liquid, and you're like, you know what? I'm a little bit uncertain about the economy. I'm a little bit uncertain about the market. Nominal rates and real rates are high, right? And that hasn't really been that way in a very, very long time. So you could have, $10, $20 million in a cash account in a money market that's yielding 5.5%, and you're set, right? So the wealthy has the ability to pay for these properties in cash while taking relatively low amounts of risk. That's why you're kind of seeing at the upper end of the market, if there's a good property and that's a very high quality, it's good product, that's moving pretty quickly, right? If it's unique, if it's scarce, of high quality and of high caliber, particularly in large cities like New York, LA, Miami, Austin, those properties are still moving very, very fast. It's sort of the middle end, like I would say just right as you get to the upper and upper middle, that's where you're starting to see the majority of the softening. But look, my view is that overall, the market will continue to soften. I think that's a good thing. I think that's generally a good thing. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning of the stream is that Harvard Business School study that they did a while back. And the study is as follows. They did a survey or a study of first generation millionaires in the United States, right? And they've defined that as having a net worth of $1 million, right? Just so we can all be on the same playing field here. And they've said, out of all of the first generation millionaires, right? Meaning they didn't inherit it, and it wasn't generationally passed down, right? You made it first generation. The majority of that net worth, of that $1 million, was made up in equity in the home, right? Maybe it was a single family home, maybe they had an investment property, duplex or a triplex, but the vast majority of that first 1 million for a first generation millionaire was equity in the home. So what conclusions can we draw from that? Well, for me, as I'm looking at the market, particularly the housing market, and I'm seeing, rents grow to astronomical levels where people can only afford to pay their rent and then they have nothing left over in savings. And then you have housing prices, right? Single family, even condos, co-ops have skyrocketed, right? Particularly since the pandemic. Well, that has been pricing a lot of first-time home buyers out of the market. And it's essentially turning America into a renter nation. But America was built on the back of a very robust and strong middle class. So I find it welcoming, and I find it rather good news that the housing market is starting to soften a little bit, because that will allow prices to recede, that will allow first-time home buyers to get back into the market and accumulate assets at fair valuations and help them build that wealth. What's not good is if you have runaway prices and runaway asset price inflation forever with no correction, and then we are turned into a renter nation where nobody can afford ownership. Nobody can afford to have money left over to invest in the stock market, in good cash flow producing companies. It's, that's the problem I see. So I think we should not interpret this most recent inflation report where shelter declined again as a negative. I think if you want a robust middle class in the United States, I think this is good, right? Short-term pain, long-term gain is sort of how I think about it. I don't know, at least that's how I think about it. Dog food says the housing market has to soften an enormous amount. I guess we'll give it time, right? Now, we'll be writing about this next week on Thursday. So if you type !news, NEWS in the chat, and you look in the chat and you see a Substack link that the Nightbot is going to drop, if you click that link, you can read all of our archived research for free. So every other Thursday after the market closes, I send everybody the Behind the Street newsletter where we cover a lot of these core concepts and topics. If you punch in your email, you'll be signed up to receive the one that's going to go out next Thursday. But you could also read all of our archived work and listen to it in a podcast style format. And we're going to be writing about the housing market a lot. So once again, if you type !news, NEWS in the chat, as we're looking at the beautiful Lincoln Center, and if you click the link, you will find what you need. This is West 64th Street now. This is actually a pretty good Italian bakery on the right. It's obviously closed. It's getting late. James says, should we retire in another country? I think you should retire where you want to live long term, right? I think if you're young and just getting started, at least this is what I'm doing, right? I wouldn't buy property in a place where you wouldn't feel comfortable living long term. Right, there's a lot of very successful investors out there that'll accumulate really, really solid cash flowing properties in markets that they're not necessarily interested in living. I don't know if I'd ever do that, right? Because worst case scenario, you could be close to your asset, live in it, have your family members potentially, in and around the area. So I would only really accumulate property in locations that I know I would want to be around, know the market, and become an expert in long term. So in my case, New York City and South Florida. I love those two markets. I want to live in those two markets. I feel like that's where I would get my edge. But some people hunt for deals in, other states, and just because the deal works and it's a good deal, they'll buy it. But I don't know. I don't think I would perform well at that. I think I would perform very poorly with that. Hey, Midwest private equity guy, what's up? Says we should retire in the US. Greatest country in the world, I'm into that. Agreed. Although I wouldn't mind, like if I was older, I wouldn't mind having a place in like Italy. You know what I mean? Just like a cool, like, I think living abroad at least for a couple of years would be kind of cool. But I definitely, you know, agree with your overall thesis there. Unlimited opportunities in the US of A, my friends. Now on tomorrow's stream, we're gonna do a little bit better job of diving into other sections of the inflation report, but we are also gonna be doing a deep dive into Home Depot's earnings. They reported earnings today after the bell. I was so swamped I didn't even have enough time to look at the report. I was working all day, pretty much until we turned on the stream at like 9:30. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into that. But before I sign off, I just want to, you know, second the notion that the most important action today, in my opinion, in the market was not the news of CPI coming out. It was the action in the debt market. And I don't think too many people are talking about it, but oh, look, they're actually doing the news. Look at that. That's so cool. But look at the action in the debt market. Look at the yield curve, right? In our last newsletter, we talked about the transition in the yield curve. When we got that better than expected inflation reading, I mean, talk about a massive bond buying binge. I mean, there's been a lot of, you know, notable prominent voices on Wall Street saying, you know, the appetite for US debt is going to decline. It didn't seem like it today. There was a stampede into the bond market and yields cratered. And that's one of the main reasons why you saw small cap stocks up about 6% on the day, right? Lower yields. And I think that's the bond market signaling that the Fed may be done with their hiking cycle. So I'll leave you guys off here. If you enjoyed the stream, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. Once again, if you want to sign up for our free financial newsletter, just type !news, N-E-W-S, in the chat, and you will be signed up to receive our newsletter. Hey, Midwest private equity guy, thank you so much for your $2 donation. Feel free to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we will see you all right back here tomorrow on the stream. So Estelle, thank you so much. Lori, Kimberly, Travel Mista, private equity guy, blues writer, Stephen Bates, Lance RB, NBA Elias, and shout out to our news crew here. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Walks on Wall Street.